Have you ever been shopping, walked past a mannequin, and for a split second you could swear it was watching you? You shake it off, right? Just a trick of the light. But what if it wasn't? What if I told you there's a story, a real one that people still whisper about, that will make you think twice the next time you see one of those plastic figures in a storefront window? This story begins back in 2009 in a small, unassuming boutique in a quiet town in Ohio. It was one of those charming little places, filled with vintage clothes and quirky treasures. Everything about it was normal except for one thing, a particular mannequin. Hand, everyone called her. She was always dressed in the same faded red dress. It wasn't for lack of trying to change her outfit. Dress simply wouldn't come off. Every time the staff tried to remove it, the store's security alarms would blare loudly, even when the entire system was completely powered down. The owner, a practical woman, initially dismissed it as faulty wiring. Old building, old wires. It made sense. But then, things got stranger. Her employees started to notice something else, something much more unsettling. Each morning when they opened the shop, the mannequin's head would be turned in a different direction than how they'd left it the night before. Sometimes it would be facing the door, other times it would be looking directly at the cash register. It became a creepy morning ritual to see where she was looking that day. The staff started joking about it, but the laughter was a little forced, a little nervous. Of course, there were skeptics. One young worker, a college kid named Ben, was convinced it was all an elaborate prank. He was determined to expose whoever was sneaking in at night to move the mannequin's head. So one evening, he volunteered to stay late to do inventory. He told the owner he just wanted to get a jump on the next day's work, but his real plan was to catch the prankster in the act. He set up his phone on a shelf, pointed it directly at the mannequin, and hit record, creating his own makeshift security camera. Then he settled in for a long, quiet night. Hours passed. The store was silent, filled with the long shadows of clothing racks. Ben was starting to feel a little foolish, thinking he was wasting his night. He checked his watch. It was 2:36 a.m. He was about to give up and go home when on the screen of his phone he saw it. At exactly 2:37 a.m., the image captured something impossible. The mannequin, bathed in the dim glow of the streetlights outside, slowly, deliberately lifted its stiff plastic arm. It extended its fingers and pointed, not at the door, not at the ceiling, but directly at the phone that was recording it. And then, just as suddenly, the feed went black. The screen was dead. The next morning, the owner arrived to open the shop and found it empty. Ben's car was still in the parking lot, but he was nowhere to be found. She called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Worried, she called the police. When the officers arrived, they found the back door of the boutique slightly ajar, unlocked. There were no signs of a break-in, no fingerprints, no indication of any struggle. Everything was in its place, just as it had been left. Except for one chilling detail. The mannequin in the red dress was no longer just wearing the dress. Draped over its shoulders, fitting perfectly, was the jacket Ben had been wearing the night before. His favorite denim jacket, the one he never went anywhere without. Ben was never seen again. The disappearance became a local legend, a ghost story told in hushed tones. The boutique, once a charming little spot, now felt heavy with an unspoken dread. Business dwindled. People were afraid to even walk past it at night. Less than a year after Ben vanished, the owner couldn't take it anymore and closed the store for good. Everything was sold off in an estate sale, including the furniture, the remaining clothes, and yes, the mannequin. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? But it isn't. The mannequin was purchased by a private collector, someone who was fascinated by its eerie history. It was taken away to a new home, and for years, nothing more was heard. The story faded, becoming just another piece of local folklore, until last month. The collector lives in a quiet, secluded house on the edge of town. Recently, one of his neighbors called the police to report a strange noise. For several nights in a row, they'd been hearing a persistent scratching sound coming from inside the collector's house, like nails dragging along the walls. The collector was out of the country on business, so the neighbor was concerned there might be a burglar or an animal trapped inside. 2 officers were dispatched to do a welfare check. They used the spare key the collector had left with his neighbor and cautiously entered the home. The house was dark and silent. They swept through the rooms, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Everything seemed to be in order, There was no one there. As they were about to leave, one of the officers shone his light down the main hallway towards the front door, and his blood ran cold. Standing there, in the middle of the hall, was the mannequin. It was facing the front door, its hand raised slightly, as if it had been about to knock. No one was home. The collector was thousands of miles away. The doors were all locked. Here's the part that will keep you up at night. To this day, no one has ever been able to explain how it moves. There are no mechanics, no hidden tricks, no wires. It's just a mannequin. A mannequin that moves when no one is there. A mannequin that seems to be waiting for something or someone. So let me ask you a question. If you were offered $1 million, would you be willing to spend just one night all alone in a room with it? Let me know your answer down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to see who's brave enough. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this chilling tale. If you love stories that blur the line between reality and the unexplained, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious and maybe keep an eye on those mannequins.